Hi everyone, my name's Diabudor, and in the past year I've been doing basically nothing besides putting tons of hours into Elden Ring Nightreign. At this point, I feel qualified to call myself a
Nightreign expert.
And the time has come for me to pass my knowledge onto you. Nightreign is a fast-paced and challenging experience, but with this guide, you'll have all the knowledge and skills required to consistently win matches and dominate the Nightlords. Make sure you check out the timestamps in the description so you can see what I'll be talking about and jump to the parts which are relevant to you. And if you find this helpful, please leave a like, share the video, and consider subscribing. It all really helps me out. Special thanks to Minicake, FrankProps4717, Pippin7771, Insomniac 0095, Josie Moi, Raymond Bridger, Vornak, and Dylan Riley for supporting me as members. If you want to see your name immortalized in
The Hall of Insolence
and get access to some exclusive perks, then consider joining my channel as a member too. With all of that said, let's get into Nightreign. Part 1. The Fundamentals. What do you do in Nightreign? Currently, Nightreign has 8 unique characters available to play as by default, with an additional 2 added by the recently released DLC. These characters have unique stats and abilities that set them apart from each other, ranging from the well-rounded Wilder and his grappling hook, to the bow-wielding Iron Eye and his debuffing Mark skill, to the spell-casting Recluse and her enormous variety of magical cocktails and their unique effects. She also has large breasts. While each of these characters has unique weapon preferences and skills, they all possess the same basic abilities, and knowing the basics is just as important as mastering your character's specialties. For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to go over the basic controls and mechanics of this game, but it has a tutorial which teaches you basically everything you need to know. Make sure you pay attention to the tutorial and you'll have no problem learning the basic controls and mechanics of the game. Nightreign is a fast-paced game where you set out on expeditions to explore an island full of pseudo-randomly generated buildings, enemies, and loot. Over the course of 3 in-game days, your goal is to prepare for a fight with one of 8, or 10 if you have the DLC, very powerful Nightlords. Levels, weapons, talismans, perks, and most other gear don't carry over between expeditions, so you'll need to find weapons which suit your character and are effective against the Nightlord, level up to increase your power, and deal with a variety of bosses and dynamic events along the way. During the first 2 days, you'll need to move quickly and kill as many bosses as possible to acquire runes which you can use to level up and purchase items from merchants, while also gathering loot and perks dropped by enemies and bosses. If you die during the day, then you'll lose a level and drop any runes you're carrying, but even if your entire team dies, you can continue playing, and you can reclaim your lost runes from where you died to get that level back. Throughout the world, and after killing most bosses, you'll find Sites of Grace. Walking near a Site of Grace will heal you, clear most status effects such as poison, and refill your healing flask supply and your FP, aka your mana. You can also interact with Graces to spend runes to level up, which will increase your stats and improve your damage output, and unlock the ability to use weapons with higher rarity levels. Midway through each day, a circle of rain will close in and confine you to a smaller area of the map, and so you'll need to identify and explore important structures before that, or else you'll miss out on their rewards. At the end of each day, the rain will close in even further and force you to fight a strong night boss. If your team gets wiped out during these fights, you'll lose the expedition. But if you win, these bosses will drop a lot of runes and give your team powerful perks which can significantly enhance your abilities. Once the first night's boss is dead, a new day will begin, and after you beat the second night's boss, you'll go to the Spirit Shelter, where you can make your final preparations before facing the Nightlord. Die to the Nightlord and the expedition is over, but win and you'll be rewarded with Merc, which can be used to purchase goods in between expeditions, and powerful Relics, which are permanent items that you can use to alter your character's attributes and skills, improve damage and defenses, and receive other useful starting bonuses to enhance your future expeditions. In between expeditions, you'll hang out at the Round Table Hold, where you can interact with the various playable Nightfarers and start quests which allow you to unlock lore and unique relics for your characters. You can also access a variety of useful services, including the Relic Rights menu, which allows you to customize your relic loadouts, and the Small Jar Bazaar, where you can use Merc to purchase new relics, chalices that unlock more relic configurations for your characters, and some other items. Or you can read the Journal, which provides some lore for the Nightfarers and allows you to begin their remembrance quests, which progress their individual stories and allow you to unlock unique relics tailored to each character. When you're ready to start a new expedition, simply go to the Round Table and select the Nightlords you wish to hunt. The layout of the game's map, which takes place in an area called Limveld, changes based on which Nightlord you're fighting, with there being hundreds of different map layouts to play on. For example, on one run, you might encounter a fort with basic, low-level enemies inside, but at the same location on the next run, you might find some ruins with mid-level enemies and hidden treasure. Field bosses throughout the world and the night bosses at the end of each day will also change, so you're never going to be completely sure of what you're going to find next. These map layouts are enhanced by rare shifting earth events, which create enormous, drastic changes to the map, and which are full of strong but highly lucrative enemies and loot, and have unique gimmicks that can change the way you play the game. Part 2. Goals. What do I need to do in order to win an expedition? There's a lot going on in this game, and because of how it pushes you to constantly keep moving, you might find it a little overwhelming at first. Because of that, in this section, I want to give you a rough outline of what goals you should try to achieve on any given expedition so you have an idea of what you're doing ahead of time. The goals you set out to achieve will vary depending on a bunch of things, including the character you're playing as, your team composition or if you're playing solo, your relic loadout, the Nightlord you're hunting, random event raids you encounter, and even the loot you find. There's no single formulaic walkthrough that'll guarantee your victory, but if you keep these general goals in mind, you will win much more consistently. Goal 0. Keep moving and kill as many bosses as possible. This first point isn't really a goal per se as much as it is a tip, but it's very important to keep in mind. I see lots of new players get bogged down taking their sweet time killing every single trash mob they find at every point of interest. And then they get nothing done and they end up getting caught in the rain once the circle closes in with no levels, buffs, or loot. Nightreign isn't the kind of game where you're intended to systematically clear out all the enemies in every single location. Nightreign's bosses are the meat of the game, and newer players often view trash mobs as barriers to destroy before confronting the boss, when in reality, they're more like obstacles to climb over. You aren't meant to kill every single thing you see, and in fact, you should ignore the vast majority of enemies in this game and focus on the bosses, because those are the ones that drop big runes and good loot. There are some exceptions to this rule. For example, at the start of the run, you're going to want to kill some trash mobs to hit level 3 so you have decent stats to kill your first boss. When you're mid-level, like around 3 to 9, then trash mobs in high-level points of interest, such as the castle or shifting earth locations, are a good source of runes to top off your next level up. Killing trash mobs you find while running between POIs is a great way to build up your ultimate ability so you have it ready against the next boss. There are also more niche scenarios where killing trash mobs can be a good idea, like if you get really lucky and find a Grafted Blade Greatsword, which has the unique effect of increasing all of your stats every time you kill an enemy. But as a general rule of thumb, you really don't want to waste time killing everything at a fort or whatever. You want to get in, kill the boss, move on to the next point of interest. Goal 1. Level up as much as possible. Unlike in Elden Ring, where levels are only a small part of what makes your character strong, levels are much more important in Nightreign. You start every run at level 1, and you can achieve a maximum of level 15. Instead of leveling up your individual stats for things like maximum health, FP, stamina, and damage, each level in Nightreign increases all of your stats so you don't have to waste time allocating points at Sites of Grace, and you unlock the ability to wield higher rarity weapons at levels 3, 7, and 10. The soft cap for levels is at level 12, which means that levels 13, 14, and 15 provide less benefit than the previous level ups do. Those levels do still provide you with noticeable benefits, but the point is that you shouldn't stress if you're not level 15 by the end of every run. You'll know your expedition is on a good pace if you hit these milestones. Level 2. At the start of every expedition, you'll be dropped near a minor camp with some trash mobs and low-level loot. You always want to kill these enemies, that should only take a few seconds, because they usually drop enough runes to get you to level 2. Compared to the difference between other levels, the gains you get by going from level 1 to level 2 are huge, and you definitely want to hit level 2 at the start of the run if you want to get the ball rolling and maximize your chance of winning. Level 3. Hitting level 3 gives you the ability to wield uncommon weapons, which are blue. Most of the weapons you encounter will be of this variety, and they can be upgraded with smithing stones to keep them useful throughout the entire run. Killing the boss at your first major POI will usually earn enough runes to hit level 3, which is good because that boss will also usually drop uncommon weapons that you're going to want to use for the next boss you run into. If you don't hit level 3 at this point, then kill a couple trash mobs and get the runes you need to get to level 3. This is when the run really begins. Level 7. You should hit level 7 by the end of the first day. At level 7, you unlock the ability to wield rare weapons, which are purple, and by this point in the run, you'll probably have found at least 1 or 2 of them. These are generally pretty solid weapons, and they don't need to be upgraded to stay relevant for the Nightlord. You'll also have a solid stat spread to work with when you fight the first night boss, which is important because this is the first point where you can outright lose the run by dying. If you reach level 7 a bit earlier than this, it's also a good point at which you can start hitting higher level locations such as the castle, or start killing formidable field bosses, which are tough but much more lucrative than the regular field bosses. Level 12. You should hit level 12 by the end of the second day. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the soft cap for levels, and going past level 12 is nice, but not super important. This is the minimum level you're supposed to be in order to fight the second night boss and the Nightlord. You can certainly win runs if you're below this level. I saw apparently one dude beat the game by just jumping on enemies. Anything is possible if you try hard enough. But any good run will have the entire team reach at least level 12 by the end of it. Goal 2. Find a weapon the Nightlord is weak to and upgrade it if necessary. Editing Diabeater here. I just want to quickly throw in a note here about your 6 weapon slots. You have 6 weapon slots in Nightreign, with the ability to equip 3 weapons in each hand, and you can swap between them using your switch armament buttons. If you're familiar with other From Software games like Elden Ring and Dark Souls, you may have the idea in your head that carrying too much gear will slow down your dodge rolls. This is not the case in Nightreign. There is no equip load mechanic in this game. There is no penalty for carrying 6 weapons, and in fact, you are rewarded for carrying 6 weapons, because every weapon you find has a passive effect, also known as a weapon passive. These weapon passives are very important and can significantly enhance your power even if you never use the actual weapon that the passive is attached to. Most weapon passives are active at all times as long as you have that weapon equipped in one of your weapon slots. With the exception of the ones that have a red hand, these are only active when you have that specific weapon in your hand, and you'll see that the hand turns white when it's active. I see a lot of new players refuse to carry more than 1 or 2 weapons at a time, and I want to make sure you know that you have no reason to do that. If you find weapon passives that are useful to you, pick them up. They make a big difference in your power. Levels are important in Nightreign, but they can only do so much for you. Having the right gear is crucial to victory. The weaknesses of the Nightlords are one of Nightrein's major gimmicks, and you'll put yourself at a major disadvantage if you don't exploit them. You can see the major weakness of each Nightlord in the Expedition menu, and it's important that you learn these weaknesses if you want to get good at Nightreign. Unlike most other enemies, the Nightlords don't just take extra damage from the damage types they're weak to. They can also be stunned and debuffed by them. For example, the Tricephalos, aka Gladius, is weakest to holy damage. Not only will holy damage attacks just be strong against it, but if you hit it with enough holy damage, it'll get a debuff which reduces its defenses and attack power. As another example, the Augur is weak to lightning damage, and it has a special attack where it flies off and releases a sleep mist that fills the entire boss arena. This sleep effect will do a lot of damage to you and your team, and will also drain your FP. But if you hit the Augur with enough lightning damage during this attack, then it'll interrupt that effect and stun the Augur, giving you a large attack window and preventing the sleep effect from happening. While exploiting these major weaknesses isn't strictly speaking necessary to beat the Nightlords, it does really help a lot. And with 6 weapon slots, you should always keep an eye out for at least one weapon with an affinity that the Nightlord is weak to. I'll talk more about exploring locations and finding items and weapons and stuff in the next section of this guide, but I'll say here that you can see each point of interest's affinity on the map. Bosses and containers at affinity-based POIs will be much more likely to drop weapons with that affinity, so it's good to check those out as needed. You may also find weapons with all sorts of affinities just by killing any boss and looting any containers, so you don't necessarily have to go to affinity-based POIs to find good stuff. Just keep your eyes open, loot chests and corpses when you see them, and you'll most likely find something decent during the run. Finally, an often overlooked way of acquiring solid weapons is to buy them from the merchants located at certain POIs. You can see which POIs have merchants by pressing the details button on your map and looking for their silhouette icon. The merchants sell a variety of useful consumables and weapons, and they'll usually, though not always, have a weapon with the Nightlord's weakness. And keep in mind that all the merchants in a single expedition will share the same inventory, with the exception of the special merchant that you'll find at a township or the Great Hollow's legendary merchant. Once you have a weapon that you're going to use against the Nightlord, it's important to make sure it's upgraded to at least purple quality. You do not want to be stuck fighting the Nightlord with white or blue weapons. Smithing Stone 1s can be used to upgrade white weapons to blue quality. You can find Smithing Stone 1s from containers throughout the world, and you can also buy them from merchants. Then, you'll need a Smithing Stone 2 to upgrade your blue weapons to purple quality. You can find Smithing Stone 2s in Mineshafts, dropped by the elite enemies there, or you can buy them from the special Township merchant, or find them in a couple other places, though rarely. In case it isn't clear, if your weapon starts out as a blue, then you don't need a Smithing Stone 1, you just need a Smithing Stone 2, which upgrades it to purple. Goal 3. Miscellaneous Goals. These miscellaneous goals are ones that I think are important enough to mention in this section, but they're less important or not relevant to every expedition, or they're only relevant to certain builds. So I'm going to list them off relatively quickly instead of giving them their own big explanations. 3A. Flask Charges. You'll start each expedition with a maximum of 3 healing flask charges. You can drink from your healing flask to heal yourself, and when you die or pass by a site of grace, your flask charges will be refilled up to the maximum. You can increase the maximum number of charges you can carry by interacting with the altars at Flask Churches found throughout the world. Being able to carry more flask charges during boss fights means you can survive for longer, which is good, so you definitely want to get a couple extra charges. With that said, don't get tunnel vision for these things. It's a newbie mistake to prioritize hitting all the Flask Churches on every expedition. Getting levels, weapons, and perks is much more important. My rule of thumb is to hit 2 Flask Churches over the course of the run. Preferably you can do it on day 1 if possible, just to get that out of the way. That puts you at 5 charges, and then you get an additional charge when you kill the second night boss for a total of 6, which is plenty for any Nightlord fight. 3B. Evergaols and/or Night Invaders. This goal applies only if you have 1 or more relics equipped, which give you the effects Attack Power Up when Evergaol Prisoner defeated, or Attack Power Up when Night Invader defeated. Evergails are these circular icons that are always located at the same spots throughout the map. If you find a Stone Sword key, you can use it to open an Evergaol, which will spawn an Evergaol boss. Killing this boss will give you the choice between extra runes, in addition to the runes that the boss drops, or you can choose a perk as a reward. Relevant to this goal, if you have the Evergaol Relic effect, then you also get a 5% damage increase for the rest of the expedition per Evergaol that you clear. Night Invaders can be found at major POIs, which randomly get afflicted with a Cataclysm event at the start of the expedition. Keep in mind that there are not always POIs affected by Cataclysms, except in the Deep of Night mode, but we're not talking about that in this guide. This event causes a cloud to appear over the POI, and a circle to appear over it on the map. Enemies at the POI will be significantly stronger, but they also drop more runes, and more importantly, when you enter the POI, you'll be invaded by 1 or 2 Night Invaders. These are evil versions of Nightrein's playable characters, and they're pretty strong, but they also drop upgraded weapons. Relevant to this goal, if you have the Night Invader Relic effect, then you also get a 7.5% damage increase for the rest of the expedition whenever you kill a Night Invader. And yes, these effects do stack with themselves and each other. You can do stupid amounts of damage if you use both relics and get lucky with Night Invaders and Everjails. This is a miscellaneous goal to keep in mind if you have the relevant relic effects equipped. If you don't have those relic effects equipped, then Everjails and Cataclysm locations are generally not worth your time unless you have nothing better to do. I'm including them here because they're a goal to put on your mental list if you have the relevant relics equipped. 3C. Sorcerer's Rises. Throughout the world, you'll find Sorcerer's Rises. Each of these requires you to solve a quick puzzle in order to gain entry to the rise, and inside it you'll find crates that drop guaranteed Starlight Shards, which refill your FP upon use, and a Dormant Power at the top, which offers at least 1 staff, as well as chances for other loot such as magic affinity weapons, talismans, rare consumables, and perks. If your build relies on casting sorceries or doing magic damage, and especially if you have the Relic effect, which increases your max FP when you unlock a Sorcerer's Rise, then it's a good idea to stop by a couple of these during your run. I include this as a miscellaneous goal because it can be very important if your build relies on finding staves or magic affinity weapons, but it's not relevant for every build. 3D. Raids. Occasionally, you'll encounter a raid or random event from a Nightlord or another boss. These raids usually have a harmful effect that can inconvenience you, such as the Sentient Pest's Locust, which will steal your levels, or they can cripple your entire run if you don't address them, such as the Equilibrious Beast's Demon Curse, which cuts your max health in half. On the flip side, defeating the raid will also give you a major passive effect that can be a huge advantage, such as randomly getting 10,000 runes whenever you hit an enemy, or getting a massive damage buff based on how many runes you're carrying. If you get one of these raids, then it's usually best to drop anything you're doing and go handle it, because these effects can be major game changers. Most runs won't encounter raids, however, and so I included this as a miscellaneous goal because of that. 3E. Wending Graces. Finally, I want to give Wending Graces a quick mention. A Wending Grace is a rare item you can find, which will revive you automatically upon death, destroying the Wending Grace in the process. These are pretty rare to find in co-op, but where they're really relevant is when you're playing solo. Obviously, as a solo player, you don't have any teammates to revive you when you go down. You do get one free life, indicated by this icon on your status effect display, so if you go down during a night boss or a Nightlord fight, then you do get to automatically revive once, and this does reset at the start of every day. But Wending Graces function as additional lives, which can really come in handy during Nightlord fights. So if you're playing solo, then you definitely want to make sure to grab these where possible. The merchant will sell one for 10,000 runes, as does the Spirit Shelter merchant. And to be clear, they only sell Wending Graces if you're playing solo. So you get 2 guaranteed Wending Graces in any solo run. Additionally, the Township merchant, or the Great Hollow Special merchant, will also sell a Wending Grace, so it's often a good idea to stop by them if you get the chance. Part 3. Locations, Items, and Routing. Where do I go in Nightreign? So now that you have a solid idea of what your goals are while on expedition, we can talk more about where you need to go in order to actually get all that shit done. The layout of Limveld's points of interest will change randomly from run to run, so while I can't give you an exact walkthrough of each map for the most optimal results, I can give you tips about routing so you can figure it all out for yourself on the go. First, we're going to talk about which main locations you should hit on days 1 and 2 and why. Then we're going to talk about how to actually physically plan out the route that you'll take from location to location and side stuff you can do along the way. And finally, I'll tell you about what you should actually do and look out for at any given location based on your needs and progress in the run. Nightreign's major POIs. Nightreign's major points of interest, or POIs for short, are locations which have bosses and/or valuable resources that are essential to winning runs. The layouts and contents of these POIs are highly variable, and they also have different levels of difficulty based on the type of POI. For example, forts have weak enemies and uncommon level loot, while the castles have much stronger enemies and will drop much higher level loot. It's important to have a rough idea of what to expect at each major POI so you can plan your route out more effectively, and so you don't get stuck fighting high-level bosses at the start of the run or waste time fighting low-level bosses when you're a high level. I'm going to quickly talk about each of the major POIs and give you a rough outline of what level you should be when you hit them. Forts. Forts are among the lowest level POIs, and typically you'll want to hit them as early as possible. Their bosses are very easy, though you can get overwhelmed by the trash mobs close to them if you're not careful. Each fort has a staff rack, which is useful if you're looking for staves to cast sorceries with, and they also have a local clue, which will highlight buried treasure and talisman scarabs near the fort. Forts have a high chance of dropping stone sword keys from the large chests that you can find in certain spots. So if you have the Evergaol relic, then you'll want to stop by and get a couple. There's also a standard merchant from whom you can buy a variety of useful weapons and items. Great Churches. Great Churches are also low-level locations that are good to hit at the start of any run. They have very easy bosses that are typically faster to reach than those of the forts. Each Great Church has a seal box which can drop sacred seals, which is very useful if you want to cast incantations, but they're also useful in general if you find buffs like Golden Vow, Blessing's Boon, Flame Grant Me Strength, etc. that any character can make use of. The chests and corpses in any Great Church may also drop stone sword keys in case you need them. Marshes. Marshes are relatively low-level locations that were added in the Forsaken Hollows DLC. You'll only find marshes on expeditions against the 2 DLC Nightlords, which are the Balancers and the Dreadlord. The boss of each marsh is located in an underground chamber, and you typically need to go through a status effect gauntlet to reach it. But the boss is also likely to drop weapons with status effect affinities, which is great if you have a build that relies on poison, frostbite, etc. Each marsh also has both a staff rack and a seal box, which makes them very lucrative for any character. And finally, chests and corpses in the marsh can also drop stone sword keys in case you need them. Tunnels. Unlike most of the other major POIs, the tunnels are always located in the same spots on the map, though they may be absent in the case of shifting earth events. The tunnels aren't a great source of runes or weapons, but each tunnel does have an elite enemy which is guaranteed to drop a smithing stone too, or an uncommon weapon, but you should pretty much always take the stone. And you can use that smithing stone too to upgrade blue weapons to purple quality. If you find a solid weapon that you want to use against the Nightlord, it's absolutely worth stopping by a tunnel and grabbing a smithing stone to upgrade it. Additionally, each tunnel has a bunch of crates, chests, and corpses that may also drop various common and uncommon weapons and consumables. These include smithing stone 1s, which allow you to upgrade white weapons to blue rarity, a rare chance to drop smithing stone 2s, and furthermore, tunnels are the best source of glintstone scraps if you want to build around them. Evergaols. Evergaols, like the tunnels, are always located at the same spots on the map, though some may be absent if there's an active shifting earth event. And there are none at all in the DLC's Great Hollow. Accessing an Evergaol requires the use of a stone sword key, which will be consumed upon opening the jail. This will spawn the Evergaol's boss, of which there's a wide range of options, from super easy Grave Warden duelists to the time-consuming Beastly Brigade, Godskins, Deathrite Birds, and more. These bosses are divided into 3 tiers, being uncommon, rare, and legendary, with each tier always dropping a dormant power with that respective quality. In addition to the runes you earn by killing the boss itself, the Dormant Power will also offer a choice between an additional 10 to 30,000 runes or a random passive perk. On their own, Evergails are a decent source of runes at mid-level, but they're not particularly worth going out of your way for beyond that point. However, if you have a Relic equipped with the Evergaol effect, then each Evergaol you clear will give you a 5% damage increase for the rest of the expedition, which can be a very powerful effect. Field bosses. Field bosses are bosses located in the field. Shocking, I know. They spawn at predetermined points on the map, though which boss appears at each location is random. There are 2 different categories of field boss, which I'm going to cover as separate points for the sake of this guide. Regular field bosses, which just have this blue boss icon, and formidable field bosses, which have the red boss icon. Regular field bosses are generally mid-level and drop good early runes, as well as uncommon gear with a chance for rares. They're often quick to kill and can be very lucrative, and learning field boss spawn points so you can kill them on the way to other POIs is an important skill to have. Main encampments. The main encampments, or just camps for short, are short and sweet mid-level locations. You can typically enter and exit camps very quickly due to their easily scaled walls. They don't really have anything particularly special going on, they're just a reasonably solid source of loot and runes. Each camp will also have a standard merchant. Ruins. The ruins are mid-level locations that are a fantastic source of weapons and weapon passives. The bosses found in the ruins can be kinda hit or miss, ranging from super easy ones to kill, like the Albinauric trio of the Holy Ruins, to really fucking annoying ones like the Watchdog duo and the No Affinity Ruins, but they do have a decent chance of dropping rare loot. The thing that makes ruins interesting and valuable, however, is the abundance of cellars which are full of treasure chests. These chests can drop a ton of loot up to rare quality and are a great way to find weapons or weapon passives that you want. Furthermore, the ruins in Limveld each have a secret cellar that is hidden by an illusory floor. Dispel that floor by attacking or rolling on it, and you'll be rewarded with 2 large chests that drop better loot and, more importantly, have a good chance of dropping talismans. If you're passing by ruins on the way to another POI, it's often worth your time to run in, ignore the boss and the enemies entirely, and just loot that secret cellar for those sweet, sweet talismans. Furthermore, the North Ruins in the DLC's Great Hollow also have 2 randomly placed chests which are guaranteed to drop Dormant Powers that can offer talismans and weapons up to legendary quality, which makes that my personal favorite location to hit in the Great Hollow. Blacksmith Villages. Blacksmith Villages are another POI which were added by the Forsaken Hollows DLC, and like the Marshes, you'll only see them during expeditions against the 2 DLC Nightlords. The bosses and enemies in Blacksmith Villages are generally fairly weak, but what they lack in power they make up for in numbers, with tons of trash mobs that can swarm you and do surprising amounts of damage if you're not careful. The bosses drop the same uncommon or rare loot as most other POI bosses, but what sets the Blacksmith Village apart is its unique gimmick, the skill-changing smithing table. You'll first need to light one of the 3 forges randomly placed throughout the village before you can use the smithing table. Once it's active, you can use it on one of your weapons to change its skill to another random skill. Each player can only use each smithing table one time, and if you're dissatisfied with the skill it gives you, then you can use it again to revert the change. If you have a weapon you like with a skill that you don't like, it's worth rolling the dice and seeing what you can get. The Blacksmith Villages also have some chests on their rampart walls, which have a chance of dropping Smithing Stone 2s, which can save you a lot of time upgrading your weapons if you get lucky. There is also a standard merchant at each Blacksmith Village. Formidable Field Bosses. Formidable Field Bosses are going to be your main source of big runes and strong weapons for the endgame part of any expedition. If you want to consistently win, you need to get good at killing these guys. These guys are really strong and hit hard, so as a general rule, you should not go after them without being well prepared first. But when you do kill them, you'll be rewarded handsomely for it. Formidable bosses are guaranteed to drop rare weapons and have a chance to drop powerful legendaries. They also have a chance to drop Wending Graces instead of perks, which can be a literal lifesaver if a Nightlord fight goes poorly. Castles. The castle, located at the center of Limveld, is an extremely lucrative location, full of enemies that drop a lot of runes, elite enemies which drop Dormant Powers, and 2 formidable field bosses that can drop anything their field-based counterparts can. There's also a semi-unique reward in the form of the Talisman chest, whose Dormant Power gives you a choice between 3 random talismans as a reward for killing the boss in the basement. Clearing out this location is basically always one of your top priorities because it's always just so dense with runes and loot. There are 3 standard merchants located at various spots throughout the castle, though keep in mind that they all share the same inventory as with every other standard merchant. If you're playing in the DLC's Great Hollow, then you'll find 2 castles on opposite ends of the map. And not only are these similarly full of highly lucrative enemies and bosses, they also have chests that can drop legendaries. Furthermore, they uniquely have the chance to spawn a red variant boss whenever you kill an enemy in the castle that drops a Dormant Power, which allows you to acquire powerful red quality weapons which would otherwise be exclusive to Deep of Night mode. Temples. Our final major POIs are the 2 temples located on either end of the DLC's Great Hollow. These are straightforward boss gauntlets, with each temple having 4 floors. The first 3 floors each have a formidable boss which has a higher chance of dropping legendaries than normal, and the 4th floor has the False Vision of a Great Rune, which provides a unique buff for the rest of the expedition along with a bonus 2000 merc at the end of the run. You'll need to kill the boss in each floor to access the next one, but if you die, you can use the checkpoint Spiritstream outside the temple to quickly get back to the floor you were on. Nightrein's minor POIs. In addition to the major POIs, Nightreign also has various minor POIs which are smaller and don't have bosses. Instead, these POIs provide a variety of useful loot that you can quickly acquire while on the way to the important stuff. Every expedition drops you in right next to a minor POI of some kind, and you always want to clear it out to get the run started. Flask Churches. Each Flask Church has an altar, which will increase your maximum number of healing Flask charges by 1 for the rest of the expedition. There will also be a couple consumable crates that can drop some useful loot, including Starlight Shards, Gold Foul Feet, and Exalted Flesh. Sorcerer's Rises. Each Sorcerer's Rise requires you to solve a quick puzzle before you can enter it, though sometimes you'll find these special rises which require you to solve 3 puzzles. Inside you'll find several crates that drop Starlight Shards, which are useful for FP-hungry builds, and at the top of the rise, you'll find a Dormant Power, which offers a choice between a guaranteed glintstone staff, or 2 other options that can range from staves, magic affinity weapons, perks, talismans, and rare consumables. If your build relies on magic damage or casting sorceries, these can be really important to hit. Townships. The Township is a rare POI which doesn't appear on every run. There are no enemies here, but instead a special merchant whose inventory is much larger than the standard merchants. This guy sells a lot of useful stuff, including a couple talismans, a smithing stone 2, an infinite supply of starlight shards, and a ton of weapons that often have good skills and weapon passives. Plus, in solo runs, he also sells another Wending Grace in addition to the one that you can get from the standard merchant. Miscellaneous Camps. If a minor POI doesn't have a church, Sorcerer's Rise, or township, then instead it'll have a miscellaneous camp. These minor camps can have a variety of different trash mobs and are generally not really worth your time. They're a decent source of uncommon consumables like volcano pots and swarm pots, but other than that, you really shouldn't waste time at them. The exception are the abandoned carriage camps, whose chests can drop stone sword keys if you need them. Or, in the Great Hollow, which doesn't have Evergaols, these camps can drop talismans instead. Routing. So, now that we've seen an overview of all the POIs you'll encounter during your expeditions, a new question arises. Which POIs should I actually go to, and in what order? There's never going to be a single, 100% consistent route that you can take every single time. Nightreign is a dynamic game with many different map seeds for 10 different Nightlords with 10 different characters and many, many possible builds. You will need to learn to adapt to the circumstances you find yourself in and make good decisions based on what you and your teammates need for the task at hand. With that said, there is some pretty universal strategy that can be applied to just about any run. We touched on some of this in the goals section, and now we're going to go into detail. I'm going to go over this in the form of a bulleted list to make it easier for you to itemize mentally, but again, keep in mind that this isn't set in stone. Day 1. The first thing you want to do at the very start of the run is clear out whatever minor camp you're dropped at. The exact type of camp will change with each run, but, with the exception of the Flask Church start, this minor camp will always have enemies who drop enough runes for you to reach level 2. Hitting level 2 ASAP is very important because it provides a huge stat boost compared to level 1, which makes it easier to kill enemies to get to level 3, and so on. POIs to look out for at the start of day 1. Forts, Great Churches, and Marshes. These are low-level locations that'll get you decent gear and runes to start the run, along with more niche stuff like staves, seals, and keys. If I'm at a fort, then I also like to check out the merchant's inventory to see if he's got any weapons or weapon passives that I want. Hit one or two of these locations and get to level 3 or 4, and then you can move on to some slightly higher level places. POIs to look out for midway through day 1. Everjails, if you have the Relic, or if there's one along the way to another POI. Regular field bosses, camps, ruins, and Blacksmith Villages. These are low to mid-level locations which provide solid runes for climbing up to level 7. They have consistent drops for solid weapons with chances for rares. You can't use rare weapons until you hit level 7, but getting them early gives you more time to plan out how you're going to fight the Nightlord. I also want to make a quick note about the field bosses. You generally do not want to fight formidable field bosses until you're at least level 7. That formidable boss will be much faster to kill, and thus much more lucrative on day 2 when you're stronger. Also, try to route for minor POIs like Flask Churches and Sorcerer's Rises between major POIs. I'll talk more about Pathfinding in a bit, but day 1 is usually when you want to get a couple of these things out of the way so you can spend as much time as possible on day 2 killing the really lucrative bosses. Finally, if you're in the DLC's Great Hollow, you should also prioritize using the resonating crystals to shatter the Great Crystal and then acquire the Favor of the Great Hollow as early as possible on day 1. See my Great Hollow guide for detailed information about that and more. Day 2. POIs to look out for on day 2. Castles and temples, shifting earth locations, and formidable bosses. These are the high-level locations which have strong bosses and the good loot. While they're certainly possible to hit on day 1, you typically won't have the power to clear them quickly and efficiently until day 2. Once you do reach that point, however, these are absolutely your priority. Unless you have a good reason to hit lower level POIs, such as getting keys from forts or talismans from ruins or whatever, you should absolutely spend as much time as possible hitting the high level POIs on day 2, because they give you the runes, weapons, and perks you need to ensure you win the run. If there's a shifting earth location active, then that is the most important thing to hit above all else on day 2. Make sure you get side stuff like Flask Churches and Evergaols done on day 1, because you should basically always spend the entirety of day 2 in the shifting earth area. Not only are these places extremely lucrative, being densely packed with bosses, elite enemies that drop dormant powers, trash mobs that drop a whole bunch of runes, tons of chests and corpses that can even drop legendary weapons, and the unique power which each shifting earth rewards you with, but also, the first circle on day 2 will always close in on the shifting earth area, and the final circle on day 2 will always close in at a specific location within the shifting earth area. So you're gonna end up here at the end of that run no matter what. If you're in the Great Hollow, then those circles will encompass one of the castle/temple areas. Pathfinding. They say that your destination in life isn't as important as the journey you take to get there, and I think that's really stupid. But with that said, knowing how to get from point A to point B is a very important skill in Nightreign, and I want to talk to you about it now. There's a lot of nuance to figuring out how to travel between locations in this game, and I have some tips to make your pathing much more efficient. And guess what? I'm going to give them to you in everyone's favorite format, a numbered list. Number 1. Verticality. Saint Riot viewers will know the importance of verticality in From Software games, and while plunging attacks aren't really a thing in Nightreign, you should still take advantage of verticality whenever possible. You never take fall damage in Nightreign, unless you jump off the map of course, and it's usually a lot faster to go down than to go up. My first tip is to try and move from places of high elevation to low elevation whenever possible. Don't get me wrong, you will do a lot of climbing in this game, and we'll talk about ways to expedite that in a second, but if you get the opportunity to travel downhill, take it. For example, if you're in a location where you've got multiple POIs that you want to hit, and they're at different elevations, it's often best to hit the highest one first. That way, if something like a raid appears, or if the circle starts closing in, or if a boss fight goes bad and you just need to get the fuck out of there, your path of egress will be much faster and give you more time to react to the changing situation. Limveld's terrain also has a general downward slope going from north to south, so if you're in the middle of the map, it can be a good idea to spend a bit of time heading north and save you a lot of time going downhill from there afterwards. Also, when it comes to POIs, if you approach them from uphill, then you can often get a better view of the place and enter it more easily, and then quickly work your way down and out from there. Number 2. Shortcuts. If you're clever about it, Nightraign's movement system allows you to take advantage of tons of shortcuts. These range from small pathing optimizations that save maybe a few seconds to skipping entire regions of the map. Experiment with stuff like your ability to wall climb, movement abilities like Wilder's grappling hook or the Undertaker's ultimate art, and see what kind of cool shortcuts you can find. I'm personally not super informed about the big shortcuts, but my boy King Sack would love to tell you all about them. So make sure you go check out his channel too if you want to learn all about shortcuts in Nightreign. Number 3. Mobility aids. From Software made an absolutely unheard of decision when it came to designing Nightreign. They actually added things which are convenient for the player. This was shocking at the time of the game's release, and if you're scared by it, then that is perfectly normal and should subside shortly. Throughout Nightraign's maps, you'll find Spiritstreams and Spectral hawk trees, which greatly enhance your mobility. Spiritstreams allow you to do an enormous vertical jump and are often placed at the bottom of cliffs to enable you to quickly ascend them, though they also provide a significant horizontal speed boost while airborne. Spectral hawk trees are located at key points throughout the map, and they'll quickly taxi you from one spot to another, and they allow you to jump off at any point along the way. Together, these provide you with the ability to traverse the map very quickly, and you should take advantage of them whenever possible. They can save a lot of time even when covering short distances, and they're vital for quickly covering long distances. Every second really does count, so make sure you use these things when you can. Not only will they save you a lot of time covering vertical and horizontal distances, they can also be used to access otherwise unreachable locations, and they're great for scouting out the lay of the land, such as to see what layout a POI has, or to see which field bosses are in the local area. Number 4. Side objectives. As you move between major POIs, and just in case it's not clear, killing bosses at major POIs is your primary objective throughout most of the run. You should choose a path that lets you hit side objectives along the way. Flask Churches, Mage Rises, Tunnels, and Evergaols are all great things to hit in between major POIs, and planning your path in a way that integrates them into your itinerary along the way to the bigger objectives is a much more efficient way of clearing out the map. I generally recommend that if a minor POI isn't located along the way to something bigger that you want to hit, then you probably shouldn't go out of your way for it. The more time you spend running across the map, the less time you'll spend getting shit done, and that's bad. Also, I want to make a specific point about using the tunnels in Limveld as shortcuts. Each tunnel has 2 entrances, and it's often a great idea to pass through the tunnel and grab a smithing stone too while you're on the way to another POI. Depending on the tunnel and the direction you're coming from, this can save you a lot of time that you'd otherwise spend climbing or just running and doing nothing. Number 5. Plant buffs. Nightrein's maps have interactable objects scattered around which give you useful buffs, and you should take advantage of them whenever possible. Rowa fruits heal you, crystal buds refill your FP, smoldering butterflies boost your physical and fire damage, golden trees increase the runes you earn from killing enemies for a while, etc. These things are very useful and can help you during boss fights, speed up your leveling, or even save your life if you use them wisely. Grabbing a damage boost and a rune boost before a boss fight will both speed up the fight and your leveling. Or eating some Rowa fruit can extend your lifetime if you get stuck in the rain, and that'll be the difference between dying and losing a level, or just barely making it out of the rain in time, alive, and so on. They're always located in the same spots throughout the map, so you can integrate them into your pathfinding if you learn where to find them. Items and looting. One of my favorite activities in games is looting. I really do just love finding stuff, and so you can imagine just how much I love Nightrein's loot system. In addition to the Dormant Powers that bosses drop, which reward you with weapons and perks, Nightrein's various POIs are filled with crates, corpses, and chests that drop all different sorts of loot, ranging from consumables to weapons, the occasional talisman, and sometimes even Dormant Powers. Despite that, I see a lot of people have trouble finding solid gear, and so in this segment I want to give you some tips about exploring, looting, and making sure you find the gear you need to win. We're going to do this one in the form of a lettered list because fuck you! A. Merchant Inventories. Small a. I would argue that the most reliable way of finding a weapon that's at least decent is to buy one from the merchant. The standard merchants that you find at forts, camps, blacksmith villages, and the castle all share the same inventory in any given expedition, so you only need to stop by one of them to check all of them. The exact weapons they carry will change from run to run, but they nearly always have something that's at least decent against the Nightlord, as well as a variety of weapon passives and skills that can come in handy. The merchant really does have a lot of good stuff, and you can always check the shop if you need something reliable. Lowercase b. Even if you don't find a weapon that specifically synergizes with your build, the merchant often has something with an affinity that the Nightlord is weak to. This can be a real lifesaver if you get unlucky and don't find anything that lets you exploit certain Nightlord's major weaknesses. B. Dormant Powers. Lowercase a. The best way to find weapons for your character is to kill bosses and loot their dormant powers, many of which, primarily field bosses and bosses at major POIs, have a decent chance to drop class weapons. Most of the Nightfarers have a specific category of weapon that they specialize in. Wilder gets greatswords, Guardian gets halberds, Iron Eye gets bows, etc. This specialty has 2 effects. For one, each Nightfarer gets a unique moveset when they use weapons that they specialize in. And more importantly, when acquiring weapons from Dormant Powers, each Nightfarer will be more likely to find weapons of the type that they specialize in, called class weapons. While there's absolutely nothing forcing you to use your character's specialty, and in fact, you should always keep multiple types of weapons for fighting enemies with different weaknesses and movesets, it's often easiest to build and plan around using your character's specialization because those are the weapons you're most likely to find. If you're looking for class weapons, especially as someone like the Recluse or the Revenant, killing bosses is your best bet. Lowercase b. With all that said, Dormant Powers won't always drop class weapons. You should learn to get comfortable with a variety of different types of weapons, just in case you don't always find the specific thing you're looking for. Nightreign is a roguelite after all, and you gotta learn to work with what you get. C. Staff racks, seal boxes, and bow racks. Lowercase a. Certain POIs will have containers that specifically drop staves, seals, and bows, which can really come in handy if you're looking for those specific things. You could easily tell which POIs have which containers by opening your map and pressing the details button. Lowercase b. Staff racks. These will drop 2 to 3 glintstone staves. They can be found in forts, marshes, and the Great Hollow's castles, but not Limveld's castle. Also, the dormant power at the top of Mage Rises will always offer at least one glintstone staff. Lowercase c. Seal boxes. These will drop 2 to 3 sacred seals. They can be found in great churches, marshes, and the sewers of the Great Hollow's castles. There's also an unmarked hut in the northwest corner of Limveld, which has a seal box. Lowercase d. Bow racks. These will drop an assortment of bows, great bows, crossbows, and ballistae. They can be found at camps, blacksmith villages, and the Great Hollow's castles. D. Chests and corpses. Lowercase a. Finally, the most obvious way to find weapons, and arguably the best way to find a wide variety of weapon types, skills, and passives, is to just loot every fucking container you see. If you really want to maximize the likelihood of finding something good or interesting, then you're gonna want to loot every damn thing you see. More importantly, developing the skill of quickly reading the names, skills, and passives on weapons as you pass by them is essential for high-level gameplay. Lowercase b. With that said, like I emphasized in the goals section, you gotta keep moving. Don't waste time scouring each POI for every single chest and corpse. What I recommend you do is take a bit of time in a few solo runs and explore the different POIs for yourself so you can learn where the good stuff is and prioritize that on your own time. Part 4. Combat. In this section, I want to briefly, wink wink, go over the basics of combat in Nightreign so that you have an idea of how to approach combat and how to improve at combat. Combat in Nightreign is a diverse and dynamic experience, which can be as simple or flashy and complicated as you want it to be. Understanding these fundamental concepts will enable you to start practicing and learning this core part of Nightrein's gameplay loop so that you can consistently win runs. The absolute basics. In this segment, I'm going to quickly go over the basics of how you control your character and what you do in combat. Offense. Light and heavy attacks. Every weapon can do light attacks or heavy attacks. Light attacks are typically faster and will generally be your bread and butter in fights. Heavy attacks are usually slower, but will do more damage and poise damage, especially if you hold down the heavy attack button to do a charged heavy attack. If you have a weapon equipped in your left hand, then you can attack with it by pressing the block button, though the left hand moveset is much more limited and can only do regular light attacks. Weapon skills. Most weapons will come with a skill, aka an Ash of War, equipped. Pressing the skill button will use the skill on the weapon in your right hand, though some skills take priority in the left hand, such as skills on shields. Using skills generally costs FP, but they have a variety of effects and can be very powerful, so use them when you have them. Casting spells. If you find a glintstone staff or a sacred seal, these two types of weapons are known as catalysts, then you can use them to cast spells. Each catalyst comes with 2 spells equipped. Your light attack button will cast the first one, and your heavy attack button will cast the second. Or, if the catalyst is in your left hand, it'll be the block button and the skill button instead. Spells can be very powerful and provide a variety of effects and benefits, but they also cost FP to use, so use them wisely. Poise damage. You can think of NPC poise as a separate invisible health bar. The enemy starts with their maximum poise, and when you hit them, you do poise damage in addition to regular damage. Every enemy has a certain amount of poise, and this can change depending on the enemy. If you reduce the enemy's poise to 0, they'll be stance broken. This stance break is indicated by a loud noise, and the enemy doing a dramatic animation where they will be stunned and become vulnerable for a little while. In many cases, you'll have the opportunity to do a critical hit on the enemy while they're stunned, though not all enemies can be critted, and in these cases, they generally just take extra damage while stunned. Stance breaks are very strong and are not only a good way to get extra damage on the enemy, but they also give your team a second to breathe. However, you need to keep up the pressure on the enemy if you want to consistently score stance breaks. If you don't hit an enemy for a few seconds, then their poise will begin to rapidly regenerate, and you'll lose some or all of the progress you made towards stance breaking them. As for the amount of poise damage your attacks do, typically, larger, heavier weapons will do more poise damage per hit, though this isn't always the case. Furthermore, Many skills can do a ton of poise damage per hit, especially when you find them on a weapon that already has high base poise damage. So keep an eye out for hard-hitting skills if you want to get easy stance breaks. Character skills and ultimate arts.
Hey everyone, last minute editing Diabetor here on a much worse microphone. Originally this section was going to be much longer, but I cut it for the sake of brevity. I might do a follow-up video with a lot of the stuff I cut from this guide. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that. But the point here is that your character's skills and ultimate arts are very important, and you should use them a lot. Don't forget to use them.
Learning your character's kit and how to best use it is an important part of mastering Nightreign. Defense. Dodging. You can dodge enemy attacks in a variety of ways, with the main one being the dodge button. Tap the dodge button while moving in a direction to roll in that direction. During your dodge, you'll have invulnerability frames, also known as iframes, which make you invulnerable to incoming attacks. These iframes only last for a short time, with different characters getting different amounts of iframes during their dodges, so it's important to time your dodges accurately. It's also important to know which direction to dodge in. Dodging backwards is not always the best move. Jumping. Some attacks can be dodged by simply jumping over them. Usually these are pretty obvious, such as ground shockwaves or low sweeping attacks, but there are also a lot of attacks that can be jumped which are not intuitive whatsoever. Running away. In addition to skillfully dodging or jumping over attacks, you can also just, not be there when the attack hits. With good positioning, or literally just pressing the sprint button and running away, many attacks can be avoided altogether, and in fact, some attacks are best avoided by running away from them. Blocking. When wielding a shield or two-handing a weapon, you can block by pressing the block button. In Nightreign, blocking negates all incoming physical damage, and it also negates some elemental damage depending on the stats of the shield or weapon you're using. Blocking attacks cost stamina, though just holding down the button so your shield is raised doesn't cost stamina. However, it does slow down your stamina regen speed by 50%, so you want to make sure to drop your shield and let it regenerate whenever possible. You'll be guard broken if you run out of stamina while blocking, which locks you into a long animation and leaves you vulnerable for a while, so it's important to keep an eye on your stamina bar. Tanking attacks, Poise and Hyperarmor. In addition to dodging, blocking, jumping, and running away, you can also just not do any of that. Poise and Hyperarmor are mechanics which allow you to just tank incoming damage without being stunned. Most characters have 40 base poise, though Guardian and Raider have 120, and your poise can be increased by using relics, perks, the Bullgoat Talisman, or Hyperarmor. Hyperarmor is temporary additional poise you get when using certain attacks and skills, such as two-handed attacks with larger weapons like greatswords, or using skills like Endure and Lion's Claw. Most enemy attacks do 50 or more poise damage, so for most characters, you'll need poise buffs or Hyperarmor to be able to tank through any attacks at all. Skills. There are some weapon skills which provide iframes, such as Quickstep, Bloodhound Step, and Dynast Finesse. These can be used to dodge attacks and are often more effective than regular dodging, though they also cost FP to use. There are also skills which don't give you iframes, but instead allow you to just tank attacks without being stunned, such as Endure, which gives you a bunch of damage negation and makes you immune to most stuns for 3 seconds, or an attack like Lion's Claw, which gives you a ton of Hyperarmor. Parrying. If you have a shield or weapon which has a parry skill, you can use it to parry certain enemy attacks. Keep in mind that this is a completely different thing from blocking. Parrying is when you use a parry skill to deflect an incoming attack, which stuns the enemy if you time it right. Not all enemies can be parried, and not all attacks by parryable enemies can be parried. In order to really know for sure if you're just, if an attack can be parried or if you just had bad timing or something, you need to Google it, unfortunately. That's just the way From Software games are. Anyway. For example, you can parry an Omen's sword, but not its kicks. Some enemies also need to be parried multiple times before they get stunned, such as the Bell-Bearing Hunter. When you do successfully parry an enemy, they'll be stunned and will typically be vulnerable to a critical hit. Ultimate Arts. In addition to any offensive capabilities your character's ultimate art has, they can also all be used defensively in a pinch. You get a ton of iframes during ultimate animations, and it's often a good idea to hold onto your ult and use it during an attack that's tricky to dodge. Reviving. You can revive down teammates by attacking them. You'll see the circle above their head, which is the revive health bar, and reducing that to 0 will revive them. It regenerates after a short time if you don't attack them though, so it's important to keep up the pressure before it starts to refill. Also, during days 1 and 2, there will be a timer in addition to the revive health bar itself, and if this timer runs out, then your teammate will die and drop their runes and lose a level. This timer is disabled during fights against night bosses and the Nightlord. Hitting the teammate will pause that timer for a few seconds, but again, it's important to commit to those revives. Every time someone gets downed, their revive health bar increases, starting at 1 pip on the first down and maxing out at 3 pips on the third down and beyond. The number of pips you've got can be reset to 1 by touching a site of grace, so if you get downed a couple times during a boss fight, it's often a very good strategy to back off, hit a nearby grace, and then come back to the boss. Though obviously, you can't do this during Night Boss and the Nightlord fight, so try not to die. Strategy. Knowing when to attack, when to back off, when to dodge, etc. is probably the most important skill you can have in Nightrein's combat system. Enemies in this game hit hard, and you will be punished for your mistakes. Mindlessly spamming attacks and panic rolling will get you killed more often than not. This game is all about being deliberate with each action you take. Punish windows. Punish windows are moments where an enemy is locked into an animation and can't attack you. These moments are called punish windows because they're the optimal time to safely attack or punish the enemy. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say that it's important to be deliberate with your actions and not just mindlessly spam attacks. Enemies respond to your actions, and they'll punish you if you try to attack them from a neutral position or if you just spam the attack button. In many cases, it's best to bait out the enemy's attack, dodge whatever combo they do, and then punish them afterwards when they're vulnerable. Punish windows can also be opportunities to hit enemies with big, slow attacks that you can't safely pull off otherwise, such as charged heavy attacks or certain spells and skills. Punish windows aren't the only time you get to attack the enemy, but they're definitely the main way you should attack, so be patient and learn the enemy's punish windows. Heal windows. Punish windows aren't exclusively used for punishing enemies, however. Every punish window is also a heal window. Enemies can input read your actions, and they'll often punish you for trying to do stuff like heal, cast spells, or use consumables. You're not supposed to just whip out a flask and lock yourself into a healing animation while the god-killing lizard man is standing right in front of you. That would be boring as hell if you just did that during every fight. No, you're supposed to dodge his attacks and heal while he's stuck doing his own animations. The devs want you to have these tense moments where, you're low on health and maybe the next attack will kill you, but you pull off a sick dodge and you capitalize on it to heal and you get a second win and win the fight, and it feels awesome. Learn to be patient and deliberate with your actions if you want to get good. Learning enemy movesets. Something you should know about Nightreign, or, anything in life for that matter, is that you're not going to instantly master everything you do. You will get hit by enemies, you will die, you will lose runs, bosses will do rare attacks that you've never seen before in which you won't be able to immediately identify how to dodge them. This isn't unfair bullshit. Literally every fucking thing you encounter will be something you haven't seen before when you fight a boss or play a game or go out into the world for the first time. Be patient and learn from your mistakes, and you'll find that you can learn boss movesets in just a few attempts. Furthermore, using things like damage negation buffs, blocking with shields, dodging using skills like Bloodhound Step, etc. all extend the time you have in a given fight before you die. And the more time you spend in the fight, the more time you'll spend learning, and the more time you spend learning, the sooner you'll become a master. You can also check out guides and resources online for tips and strategies, some of which I'll have linked down in the description, such as my own guides or comprehensive ones made by fellow YouTubers like Chris Crass. When people say get good, that's not a cop-out excuse to justify some kind of challenging, bullshit difficulty game. They're literally telling you to do the practicing and learning that is required to be good at the game. Alright, well, I think I've rambled on for long enough. There are some other things I wanted to include in this guide, but as usual, it's already too goddamn long as it is, and I really just need to get this shit done at this point. I've been working on this for like 2 months at this point. I just want this thing done. So I'm going to save that other stuff for future videos. The final thing that I want you to take away from this video is this. Losing at first is a big part of the learning process. Don't let it make you give up. I hope I've given you the knowledge and advice required to make that process as smooth as possible. And if you play on PC, I hope to meet you on an expedition someday. My name is Diabetor, and I will catch you later.